Tonight, we have 6 stories, from a strange phenomena with tiles, to creatures roaming the street, an old hard drive with a disturbing background, and more. A huge thank you to all of tonight's writers. Remember to send in your story if you'd like to have it featured. You can either submit it to my subreddit, r/slumberreads, or my email you can find in the description. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoy. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated. Enjoy the video, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. They filled Mason's shower, faces. Impressed into the tile patterns, the distended faces stared at him as though from coffins. Let me say my name though. I'm Samantha. I was Mason's girlfriend at the time of all this. And it's important I share this mainly to ease my mind. I believe that sharing your horror diminishes the power it has. Listen to people's horrors. The first time Mason saw a face, I was brushing my teeth. Mason was humming in the shower, as he does, and the room was getting rather steamy, so I smudged the mirror a bit after I spit out my toothpaste. I looked at my face. Just a vain inspection. "Hey," he said, "there's a face in the tile." I looked toward the steamed up glass doors that hid Mason from my sight. "Weird. What does it look like?" I said. He described it as the profile of an elderly man. The man's nose ended in a sharp point that seemed to fade away into the tiles, incomplete. His eye was present only through an absence, just space where the patterns were not. His thin wisps of hair trailed off into the tile's brown speckling, petering out in random blotches and splatters like old, dried blood. Mason peeked his head out from the shower and told me to come look. I feigned annoyance. I did not want to look for some face in the tiles, but I went over to see anyway. Leaning over, Mason squinted at the tiles. Can't find it again. After that first encounter, Mason made a game of locating faces in the shower tiles, and for a week or so, I played along. He had never seen the same face twice, and there was not always a face to be seen, but within that week, he could locate 2 or 3 at a time. I would listen, brushing my teeth or doing some skincare, while he described them. They were not always horrific. Sometimes they were just elongated faces, made-up animals. This one looks like a giraffe with a dog head, or even busts that alluded to a fuller person. Morning after morning he did this. I lost interest pretty quickly. Not that I ever felt overly interested, but I was willing to play along. It gave us something to bond over, but eventually, the face game turned private for Mason. I knew he still played it every morning because I'd hear him quietly say, "Aha," whenever he found one. Weeks passed where Mason did not mention the face game, and his "aha" sound turned to white noise. So it was strange when he stopped me before I left the bathroom one morning. "Sam, will you wait for me to finish showering?" "Why?" I asked. There's one face here I don't like." For a moment, I said nothing. I just heard the water trickling to the floor, running off his body while he stood behind the fog door, waiting for my response. I think that was the moment I knew something had gone wrong. The garish face that revealed itself to Mason, that was a word he took to using, reveal, had transformed the tile, like sunburn transforms skin. The natural patterning of the tile appeared wrong to him. Rather than the usual splotches and speckles, this broken face yawned open the jagged lines of pain that creased across the faintly visible eyes. The eyes were 2 blank spots, tan patches surrounded by dark brown, a knotted ear, a hairless head, a gaping mouth, and the absence of a tongue. After he described it, he added in, "It takes up 4 tiles, Sam." As if that was of some significance. For a little more than a week, Mason ended the face game by buying a waterproof case for his phone. With a suction cup, he mounted it on the wall and decided to catch up on the news whenever he showered. If he heard the weather, we would discuss what he should wear. If he saw them prepare meals, we would consider our dinner options. If he saw crime reports, we both listened with voyeuristic interest. The routine felt normal, until they announced a missing person report. "What we are going to show you is a graphic scene," the news anchor said. "If you have children watching, We advise they turn away. I put down my face wipes and opened the shower so I could see the report. We both listened with rapt attention. A scene began to roll of a man walking around his house, a home security system recording him. Colin Rogers was at his home preparing to leave for work when an intruder broke in. Cracks of daylight bled through the curtains as a masked intruder entered the house through the unlocked front door. Colin, the homeowner, walked to the front door casually. Perhaps he thought the noise was a knock. Colin froze in place. The intruder held out a gun. With his hands up, Colin walked down a hallway and toward a closet door. He opened it up, then the intruder followed in behind him and shut the door, sealing off the view. A gagging noise and a muffled gunshot sounded from behind the closed bathroom door. Footage of the closed door rolled a few seconds longer, then stopped. Police were unable to identify the armed intruder. If you have any information that can lead to the arrest. Mason hastily closed the news stream, went to the webpage, and played the video again and again. He did not recognize the intruder's face, but he swore he recognized Colin. The next day, Mason came over to me while I was on my laptop. He sat down beside me on the couch. "I need to show you," he said. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through the photos while I waited. "Here, look, you see?" I looked at the photo, looked at Mason. His eyes were so dark, then looked back at the photo. It was a side-by-side comparison of Colin from the news report and the face in the shower. I saw no face. Afraid to look at him in the face, afraid he would see my disbelief. I looked toward the floor while I handed back his phone. "I mean, I understand how you could see a face there." I started. The wrong thing to say. Those words to him were a denial of the mutual reality we had. Until that moment, I had never hinted at my dislike or disbelief in the face game. "You think I'm making this up? You think the faces aren't there?" "Our brains have this way of making faces when there are none. Pareidolia." I typed it into Google quick and started to turn my laptop toward him. "There's plenty of examples." He pushed the laptop screen away, avoided looking at it. "But it means something," he said. "How is it just coincidence that I see a murder victim in the shower wall?" He looked away, looked at the living room wall. "You remember that huge face I told you about?" I nodded. He pointed to his phone. It was Colin. "I bet he's there still." He started walking towards the bathroom, then turned around. Noticed I was not following him. "Come on, you'll see." Reluctantly, I followed behind. Was that the wrong thing to do? Was there even a right thing? Tile, more tile, brown patterning. A smudge kind of like a cloud, but just a smudge. Nothing. I bet. He paced around the bathroom, then stood still and started to take his shirt off. "I bet they only appear when the shower is on. I need to be in the shower. I put my hand on his shoulder and he stopped. Looked down at the shirt on the floor, looked at the shower. "Okay," he said, and he reached down, picked up his shirt, put it back on. That touch, I thought, told him I cared for him, but my caring meant the face game was an issue, that the face game was not real, that he was alone. In a sense, I told him to shut up. "Yeah, they can come over," Mason said. "You'll play charades with us." "Yeah." Then he looked at me in the eyes. "And drink?" That last part almost made me reconsider the whole night. Mason had shut himself away from me. He started showering earlier in the morning, multiple times a day even. He started working from home, because the company was changing. I think he just wanted to be closer to the shower. Whenever I heard the shower running, I would drink a glass of wine. It became my own private game. I just needed a way to cushion myself from the noises he made. Some days he would cry, laugh, or just be silent while the shower ran. It all frightened me. To break him out of that cycle, I decided to invite over some of our friends. Typically, they were busy, or we were busy, or feigning being busy because Mason did not want the company. There was a knock on the door. It was them. "Let's just enjoy the night," I said. He nodded. I saw his eyes pointing towards the bathroom. I welcomed in Alice, Tony, and Michelle. They each had a bottle of wine they brought. Mason was already in the kitchen getting glasses. He had not said anything to them. Late into the night, we were all feeling joyful and talkative. Our charades game was progressing sloppily, basically just improv. Tony finished his spider imitation where he crawled around and wrapped Alice in a blanket. She was playing the role of a very devout praying mantis. And then Michelle took the stage. No one correctly guessed Michelle's performance. I could not exactly say what it was, but she was leaning forward, peering at the wall, laughing and making noises. I watched on blankly. Alice was asleep on the floor, and Tony spouted off guesses like mental patient, you're insane, a crazy painter, and so on. A surrealistic feeling came over me. The air took on a thick quality as if everyone was moving around inside a giant cube of water. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it was just because I was drunk, but the fog stayed. I worried the house was on fire, and turned to Mason to see what his reaction was. Mason was not next to me. Where did Mason go? I asked. Tony slurred a response to a different question, one that was not asked, walked into the kitchen, and returned with 2 glasses of water. Michelle continued her act. Had she forgotten who she was? And kept stammering and laughing and crying, and I heard the shower running in the distance. In a blink, I was sober. I think it's time we end this, I said. After a long period of coaxing and prodding, I got everyone into an Uber and on their way home. I wish I had let them stay. Maybe they would still be around. It was 2 p.m. when I woke up. The hangover was tremendous, and I headed right into the bathroom. Mason was sitting on the floor, his head resting on his knees, the shower running. His clothes were soaking wet. Mason? I shook him. He groaned, lifted his head, crawled into the shower. I saw their faces, he said. The water beat down on his back. I could tell it was cold. There were so many, but I found theirs. I spent my hangover gathering up clothes and other necessities. I called my parents, told them Mason and I were arguing a lot. They agreed I could come to stay. Every day for a week I called Mason. He never answered, and I never stopped worrying about him. So I decided to go knock on his door to ensure he was okay. When I arrived, the house looked different. I noticed the windows were walled off. Something solid blocked them. Smoke rose from the chimney in a steady, misty stream. Mold covered the siding of the house. The door was moldy too, and soggy. I reached out to knock and my fist slapped against the door, making a mushing sound. Rotted. I could have pulled the door away in chunks if I wanted to get in. It was not locked though, so I gently opened it up. A billow of steam poured out at me, a wall of humidity. The hole was dark as a cave, and all I could hear was the spray of water. I stepped in, and my shoes thudded against the tile. The carpet had been replaced. The walls, too, were tiled. Tile covered the spaces where the windows were, sealing off the outside world, turning the house into a giant shower. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight. Faces were everywhere. Police searched Mason's house and found no sign that he was still living there. It has since been condemned. Alice, Tony, Michelle, I have not heard from them. Neither have their families. But the faces, the face game, I play it now without trying. I see them whenever I shower. I tell you all this in an effort to alleviate my fear or miraculously cure me of whatever this is. Perhaps Mason was trying to do the same thing. Living in an urban landscape, there aren't any nice park trails near my house. In fact, the nearest walkable park is about a 30-minute drive away. So instead of driving for an hour whenever I want to get some fresh air, I've taken to walking my neighborhood. Well, today was a particularly lovely and bright day, so I decided that it was a wonderful idea to take a walk and enjoy the breeze. As I stepped outside, the cheerful songs and strange noises of the local songbirds filled my ears, and I took in the angelic sight of the sunlight reflecting off of the bright green leaves that covered the trees. My eyes took a moment to adjust to the world's bright complexion. Damn it, I'd forgotten my sunglasses again. As I started walking down the decently sized hill that separated my cul-de-sac from the rest of my neighborhood, I realized that I was the only one on my street. Not like no one else was walking, There was literally no sign of any other human life besides myself. None of my neighbors even had their window blinds or garage doors open. Normally this wasn't too strange of an occurrence, but for such a beautiful day, it was pretty weird. Suddenly gray clouds started to move in at an unnatural rate. In under a minute, the sky went from completely clear to smothered with a thick layer of dark clouds. As the sky lost color, the world also lost something. Sound. In the same moment that gray clouds completely filled the sky, all sound had disappeared. By the end of the minute, I was screaming and trying everything to do to make noise. And yet I heard nothing but silence. Then a head popped up out of the curb drain. It was huge, gray, misshapen, and lacked eyes, ears, or a nose. Its only facial feature was a mouthful of large, crooked teeth. Two large hands emerged next with unusually long, tentacle-like fingers, and I finally started running away from the thing. As I sprinted down the street, I realized that the world looked wrong. It lacked all color, instead being made up of various shades of white, gray, and black. It looked like the world was from an old black and white photo. As I ran towards my house, I made the fatal mistake of looking back. The thing had fully emerged now, and it was at least 20 feet tall. The whole body was gray and horribly misshapen. The worst parts were its arms and hands, the arms hanging down halfway through its calves, and its tentacle-like fingers dragging along the street. The creature lumbered forward, and I turned around to continue fleeing, but I never got far. I hadn't even covered 15 feet when giant tentacles started to fall around me. They fell as to make a sort of box shape. I looked around to try and find an exit, but there were none. Right before they fully enclosed me, I looked behind myself at the creature. Its fingers had grown to enormous lengths, and it was the dozens upon dozens of tentacles branching off of the original 10 digits that were currently trapping me. After I was fully enclosed, the tentacles started to merge together. They melted into one structure like hot candle wax, until I was left in a blank white landscape that offered a panorama as far as the eye could see. It's kind of like that one Harry Potter limbo scene, except it lacks any of the architecture, and essentially everything else present in the strange world of white. As I type this on my phone, this place provides a strangely good cellular connection. I wonder what will become of me. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a junker. My office closet is filled with boxes upon boxes of old computer parts. I've been a PC builder since the Windows 95 era, and never let up on my hobby. This allowed me to collect a fairly large stock of spare parts. If I'm ever out and about shopping, and see a good deal on an old, used PC, I snatch it up immediately. This is what happened to start off a set of events I won't forget anytime soon. In browsing the wares at a local pawn shop, something caught my eye at the end of one particular aisle. I made my way through the 20 to 30 weed whackers that lined each side of the aisleway. Apparently, once winter hit, it was time to pay off a few debts with said items. Once at the end of the aisle, I pushed several items out of the way on the bottom shelf to reveal an old, dirty, beat-up PC tower. It was one of those old plain Jane white computer towers that was obviously owned by a smoker, as it had a yellowish hue to the color. Well, what do we have here? I said to myself in a sarcastic tone. I grinned at the thought of what I could find once I dissect it. I brought the dirty tower up to the employee at the register. The item didn't have a price tag, and, fighting the urge to ask the employee if this meant it was free, I inquired about how much it was. "How much is this thing going to set me back?" I asked, wiping my hands on my jeans from the gunky case. After a squinty-eyed examination of the item, he looked back up at me. $10. He said in a tone as to not even attempt to bargain. His tone had no effect on me. "Oh, come on," I exclaimed. "Look at this thing. It's disgusting and old. Most likely, it doesn't even work. I just wanted to see if I could get a couple working parts out of it." After a few seconds of staring at the tower with his lips puckered to the side, he relented, and I made my way home with my new prize. I hastily brought the tower to my office as soon as I arrived home. I quickly grabbed the screwdriver and began opening the side plate. It was disgusting. Peering into the now open case, cobwebs were strewn about. A black substance, I don't care to know what it was just lying in a dried up puddle at the bottom. I grounded myself on metal and began cleaning the insides with a paper towel. It was not fun. Once cleaned to the best of my ability, I began removing each piece one by one. I scoffed to myself as I removed the old video card that was a tiny little board. Today's cards are bulky bricks with no less than 2 fans on them for major gaming. This PC had not been used for years, decades even. In the corner of my office I had an open PC tower I used to test spare parts. I would never use my newer updated PC to test old items. Faulty parts could conflict with the other components, and let's not forget about computer viruses. To my disappointment, almost all of the spare parts taken from this old setup didn't work at all, including the motherboard. Only one solitary component proved to be functional: the hard drive. As soon as I plugged it in with the old gray ribbon cable, I fired up my computer. To my delight, it worked. I could see old DOS prompts scrolling up the screen, including the size of the hard drive. I smirked and shook my head at the 2,048 megabytes that it showed me. For context, that's 2 gigabytes, and my newer PC is equipped with 2 terabytes. This is equal to 2,000 gigabytes in comparison. This computer might be older than I first thought. Right here, I have to admit something. One of the reasons I was ecstatic that the hard drive worked was that's really the only components I get really excited to test. I get a bit of a thrill browsing through old files and pictures, even music that was probably pirated off of Napster or one of those old peer-to-peer sharing programs. It's almost like peering into the past and looking at how life was back then in their family photos, old games they used to play, and the music of the time. Admittedly, I would find folders full of porn as well. Sometimes I found a side of a certain person that I didn't want to see, judging from the context of their videos. Some people are twisted. My curiosity increased as I hit the hard drive button. The obvious files were shown with all the Windows folders, my pictures, my music, and the such. I slumped my shoulders in disappointment as I discovered all the files were empty. It was almost as if someone installed Windows, then did nothing. Well, that was worth it, I said to myself as I sat back in my chair. After several seconds of staring at the screen while holding the mouse, I realized there was one folder I hadn't tried: my documents. I double-clicked on the shortcut. It opened the file to show another file. This file was labeled Documents, clearly made by the previous user. I ended up clicking through 3 more subfolders. This was clearly a lazy attempt to hide something, probably their adult entertainment folder. As I reached the last folder, I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but I only had one lonely file looking back at me: MySins.doc. A doc is simply a Word file used in a lot of businesses for memos, school reports, and so on. Normally, I would have been a little bummed to not find something a little more exciting, but the title piqued my interest. I opened it. What was presented in front of me was, as you'll discover shortly, kind of a diary, except in list form. Sounds confusing, I know, and trust me, it's equally confusing to describe. Each sentence was quick and to the point of what this person did that particular day. I suppose a log would more accurately describe it, but it was a little more personal. The formatting of this diary was not the most interesting part, though. Not in the least. It's what was said. It's what this person did on these particular days, and decided to log it here. She made the mistake of dumping me. I had the last laugh when I dumped her back, right into the river. The girl said she wants some adventure. I took her to the woods, gave her a head start. The hunt was good, but I made my kill. I hope she liked her adventure. That's your girlfriend? Nobody talks to me like that. I followed them home. She didn't even budge out of her sleep as I slowly pierced his throat, very slowly. I didn't realize how long it took for someone to suffocate. I didn't have to kill that jogger. Didn't even plan it. She was just there. My jaw was dropped and my eyes wide open in shock of what I was reading. Could this just be a joke? Or could I really be reading the ramblings of a serial killer? I read on.
I like this one. I kept her for a few days. I would have kept her longer, but I wanted to see how long she could last. I chopped off a few fingers and toes each day. It wasn't as long as I thought. This one was an accident. He bumped into me first, but hit his head on the brick wall. I accidentally slammed his head into the same brick wall repeatedly. The human skull is surprisingly easy to open.
I stopped reading. I could tell the murders, the sins of this monster, were getting more and more gruesome. I slid my chair back and stood up, putting both of my hands on my head to hopefully get more air into my lungs. What the hell is this? I murmured to myself as I paced my room. I stood, staring at my computer screen from across the room, wondering if I should resume my reading of this psycho's memoirs. I don't know why, but I did.
Police came to ask me if I knew anything about a husband and wife's disappearance. Their ineptness showed no bounds, as I jokingly told them they were in my basement tied up. They told me not to joke like that. I think the husband will go first. I've always wondered what castration was like. I waited for him by the river. The old man was on the brink of death anyway. I laughed in delight at the irony of me pulling him with his own fishing pole into the river.
I gasped in horror. This couldn't be. My grandfather went missing on a fishing trip in 1996. Slim chance, I know, but the idea that this killer could be responsible for my grandfather's death sent me into an extreme frightened state. It took me a full minute to come to my senses. I let out a heavy exhale and continued. Don't ask me why, but I did. The entries went on for page after page. Could this be some sick person just writing out his fantasies, and I'm getting worked up over nothing? This thought filled my mind as I perused more and more of these sick stories. That thought ended up being false. About 5 pages in, this person began pasting photos onto the document. Photos of his victims. I held my hand over my mouth in horror as I saw the gruesome death scenes in front of me. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, ready to head to the police station with the hard drive. Something caught my eye. In one of the pictures, it was my house. It was my childhood house in the background. The victim lay bloody and bashed on the ground, but in the distance, through the trees, you could see the distinct second-level patio my dad built. The paneling on the side of the house was exactly the same. The windows were in the same spot. It was definitely my house. I begrudgingly scrolled through more photos, trying not to read the killer's little captions on what happened. I needed to find more evidence that this was happening in my neighborhood. I found it. My elementary school filled the photo. Children were playing. No brutal death scene, just children playing on the playground. I looked at the photo in confusion. The caption on this particular photo chilled me to the bone.
Next.
This psychopath was contemplating the brutal murder of children. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. I remembered news reports of a spike in child kidnappings one particular year. Could this have been caused by the owner of this hard drive? I have to know, I whispered to myself. Daylight was ending fast. I quickly ran to my car to begin a trip I wasn't sure I should make. Familiarity set in as I arrived in my old neighborhood where my parents still lived. I wasn't there for a visit though. I parked my car on the side of the street and began walking. Walking to the spot I saw my house in the ghastly photo from. As dusk approached, I found it. It was the exact spot I saw in the picture, except no evidence anything had ever happened here. I don't know what I was expecting to find except the trees and now overgrown bushes, but I now knew. I wasn't wrong about the location. As it got darker, I began mindlessly walking around the area. I was contemplating what to do next. Obviously, I had to report to the police, but I needed a moment to recollect my thoughts. I was stopped suddenly at realizing there was something directly in front of me. Covered in overgrown branches was a tiny shack. When I say tiny, I mean this thing could have passed for an outhouse. I looked behind me, realizing I had walked a lot farther than I thought. Civilization was nowhere in sight. I began to walk back from where I came, but my dumb brain kicked in, and my curiosity beckoned me to check out the shack. I brushed away several droopy branches that covered the front door as I clicked on my flashlight. I tried looking through the wood panels on the door to see if I could get a preview of what's inside. As I opened the door, I was greeted with the sight of what I could only describe as a hunter's shack. A large hunting knife laid on a shelf, 2 curved meat hooks hung in the corner. I couldn't tell if the discoloration of the blades was from rust or a possible victim's body. Did I just find the killer's stash? With my jaw dropped, I slowly panned the entirety of the structure. A flicker of light from a small reflective surface caught my eye. I shifted my head back and forth to get another glimpse of what I just saw. As the now developing moonlight hit the surface again, I crouched down. I dug through a small pile of rags to retrieve the item that almost seemed to be calling to me. I found it. It was an old, beat-up camera. The tiny lens from the camera offered a reflection of the moon behind me. The old tech of this camera could have been laughable if I was in the mood. I pushed the power button. Nothing. Obviously there would be no charge to this thing after all this time. I turned the camera over and let out a scoff. AA batteries, I said to myself with a smirk, shaking my head. I quickly set the camera down and began disassembling my flashlight. I was in luck as the flashlight housed several AA's. I hastily transferred the batteries to the camera and hit on the switch. I was almost, yet again, disappointed as it did nothing. A few seconds passed and I moved to open the battery compartment again. The tiny LED screen on the camera flickered to life. It was working. After a quick browse of the operating system on this ancient camera, I was able to find the photo gallery. I remember backing up into one of the shelves, as what was displayed on the tiny screen in front of me was more death. More and more pictures similar to what I found in that doc file. Everything connected. I grabbed my powered down flashlight and began running. Moonlight was the only thing that lit my path as I ran. It felt like forever before I finally made it back to the scene of the murder by my house. I quickly jumped in my car and made my way to my parents' house. I screeched to a halt in their driveway. I jumped out of my car. With the engine still running, I began pounding on my parents' door. "Hold on," I heard my dad's voice yell from the other side. I began calming down as my dad slowly opened the door. Dad, I have something to show you. Something I found," I yelped, catching my breath. My dad looked down at my hands and gazed towards the old camera I was holding. A toothy grin came across his face as he said, "Wow, I haven't seen that thing in years." The thing that watched me in my slumber, retiring to my bed drunk and tired, with all the lights in my house snuffed and the only visibility provided was the vague streetlight outside, a dim shade of amber. My bed resides on its long side against my window, and at either end draped my black curtains. In my drunken state of obnoxious grogginess, I was mildly aroused by slight movement my intoxicated mind picked up from the curtain by my head. Rising from my laying position, I examined the black fabric, searching behind it for any home invaders hiding maliciously. There was nothing. I slumped back into my bed, returning to my drunkenness, petty thoughts and old memories loitering within my foolish mind. Again, more movement from the curtain. I was somewhat unnerved now rather than curious and grabbed the curtain, flinging it left and right in an attempt to discard of any bugs that might be disturbing it. Yet again, I was met with nothing. "For fuck's sake, I just want to sleep," I groaned. After a few minutes, I eventually fell into a deep, drunken slumber. I had a strange dream that night, probably from the alcohol. Glimmering eyes peered down at me from the curtain, as if itself was watching me. A long black appendage grew from the broad fabric, and reached down to me with lengthy fingers, darker than night, that entered through my mouth and descended down my throat, touching my soul. Such a vivid and peculiar dream. I could see a diabolical glee in the eyes amidst the black curtain. It felt disturbingly real. Awakening to the golden morning light illuminating my face and drowning my sight in a cloak of yellow, I inhaled heavily and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. I sat up. My mouth was dry, my head vaguely sore, and my throat was also somewhat raw. Confused, I massaged it with my hand and rose from the bed. I peered at the curtain suspiciously. It draped down the wall as it usually did, while glimpses of the nightmare returned. A vague chill ran down my spine, as if it were attempting to skedaddle from some nearby danger unknown to me. I went on with my day as usual. Over the next few days, I grew wary of my curtain. Ever since that nightmare, strange occurrences would happen involving the length of fabric. I awoke one morning, half asleep as I screamed while jolting up from my bed in fear. At first, I thought a tall man in a black suit was staring down at me from the wall. I came to and realized it was nothing but my curtain. I feared I was going mad. I would come home to the curtain move slightly, giving me an overall uncomfortable vibe. One day the paranoia grew overwhelming, causing me to charge at the curtain with a knife. In a fit of rage, I stabbed at it while screaming like a madman. Halfway into my vicious attack on the fabric, goosebumps rose from my skin, and amidst the madness, I couldn't help but feel I was aggravating something I shouldn't be. I vacated my room and decided to sleep on the sofa from then on. The dreams were not halting. One unforgettable night, I vividly dreamt I was naked and bound to the living room floor on my stomach by some invisible force. In front of me was my bedroom door. It began to open, emitting a chilling creak as it did so. Appearing from behind the door was an inky black shapeless thing. It glided over to me and laid close to my face. A pair of eternally dark eyes materialized from the blackness, burning through my eyes and into my soul. It began to rise and enshrouded my whole body. I felt a cold smoke-like sensation rise up my leg. An elongated appendage of some sort grew and invaded me. I could feel it in my body, unable to move or fight back. I was helpless and fell into impotent weeping. I could do nothing but wait for this infernal nightmare to end. My closed eyelids were illuminated by the dawn. I opened my groggy eyes, adjusted to my surroundings gradually, and at the realization of where I lay, I became utterly horrified. I was laying on my stomach, nude and facing my bedroom door, which stood halfway open, with the cursed black curtain in the distance behind it. I looked around helplessly, hoping it was just a mere nightmare. I curled up into a ball and wept. Enough was enough. I couldn't be in that house anymore, not with that thing. The sheer claustrophobic paranoia was crushing my very existence. In a rush, I gathered what I could, spending as little time around the bastard curtain as possible, all the while feeling its eyes on me. Exiting the house and slamming the door behind me, I drove to the closest bar. Whilst driving, I gradually became more awake, and the sheer horror of last night's happenings began to truly set in, almost as if my mind was summoning a protection of sorts for my mental well-being. It muffled the scenes and sensations as best it could. At the bar, somewhat uncomfortable resting my weights on my backside upon the stool, I ordered a straight whiskey. Down the hatch it went, stinging my coarse throat from the screaming. A single tear of melancholy fell from my right eye. I felt dirty, violated, utterly and horrifyingly perplexed. "Another whiskey, please," I ordered with a meek voice. About 9 p.m. I rocked up in the driveway, astounded at how I returned in one piece, as I could hardly stand, and distinguished 3 versions of everything. A wave of confidence fueled by rage bewitched me, by the gift of alcohol. I slammed open the door and screamed demon. In my right hand was a canister of petrol I had picked up on the way back, and in my left was the cigarette I had been toking on during the ride home. Stumbling through the living room and entering my room, I stood face to face with the abominable, draping black curtain and stared the evil thing down. Treading over, I opened the canister and began drenching the fabric in petrol while cursing at it with malice. "I'm gonna burn you, motherfucker." I turned to my bedroom door. Turning around, I faced down the curtain once more, taking one last drag of my cigarette before flicking it onto the curtain. It roared up in flames. An ear-piercing wail sounded, a sound best described as hate. I witnessed and perplexed as the curtain began twisting and screaming, the metallic rings clacking against the rail while it rapidly writhed in pain. Among the red flames spawned those 2 familiar diabolical eyes within the fabric, filled with animosity. Still watching in terror, the curtain tore off the rail violently and morphed into black shapes drenched in flames. The demonic thing flew from each end of the room with such velocity, all the while shrieking with truly frightening, otherworldly roars. It landed on my bedroom floor in front of me for a split second before tearing its gaze back to me. Whilst fearful the thing would pounce for a final onslaught, we shared detestable eye contact before it swiftly hurled itself out through my window and into the dark night sky, the flame still shrouding its inky form. To this day, I am devoid of any idea of what that thing was, but whatever it was, it's evil. If it could take the form of my curtain, it could possibly morph into anything. To those reading this, please take dire caution, and always check your curtains. Before this virus kicked me out of my dorm, I had a scarring experience. I hate living in dorms, because people never be quiet. My college makes all freshmen live in a dorm. The people that live right next to me seem like they were always making noise. They are the only thing that I do not miss from college, but I'm not here to rant about that. It seems like it all started back in August after I moved in. Their loudness first started off sounding like it was a bunch of people having a loud conversation, along with even louder laughing. Of course this annoyed me, but I was able to play some video games and tune them out. There would be times where I'm about to sleep, and I hear a loud pounding noise, along with some moaning. Whenever this happened, I would listen to music until I fell asleep. I had to deal with this for a few months up until around 1 a.m. on January 12th. It was quiet before I heard the people next to me being even louder than they had previously been. It sounded like a male and a female were arguing about something. Oh my god, here we go again, I said in my mind. I put my ear against the wall. I was able to clearly hear what was being said. The guy's voice sounded familiar. I eventually recognized it to be one of my classmates named John. Do you think this is funny? Do you think this is a game? John said. It was an accident, I swear. I can't remember what the girl's name was, but I'll call her Sarah. I can't tolerate this anymore. After I heard this, I felt the wall vibrate as I heard Sarah yell in pain, being pushed into the wall. Then it sounded like he was beating the life out of her. I have to stop this, I thought. As I was at my door to intervene, I got a text from Xander, a friend of mine who lives directly across from the dorm where this is taking place. Hey, do you hear all that noise that is coming from Sarah's room? Yeah, I was actually about to put a stop to it. John is pretty dangerous. I think you should stay out of it. I don't care, I'm tired, and these people are always loud when I want to sleep. Good luck. Be careful. After that brief conversation, I went over to the dorm, and before I was able to pound the door, I saw the door shake as Sarah was being pushed on it. No, please, Sarah shouted, begging for mercy. Instantly after that was said, a hole went through the door. I heard a bullet whistle past my ear, and the bullet went through Xander's door, and I heard him shout, "Ah, fuck." As later I learned that he was hit in the foot. I froze. I don't think anyone else heard the gun, because I think it had a suppressor on it, as it was fairly quiet. I stared at the door for quite some time until I saw blood pouring from under the door. I didn't have time to see anything else. I quickly ran back into my dorm and went to hide under my bed. I then heard John yell, "I didn't mean to do this." After that, I heard John screaming, and then bullet holes started to appear in my dorm. I called the police and they quickly arrived. I first heard police pound on John's door. This is when I opened the door and saw John get tackled by a cop, while the other cop told me to get back into my dorm. I heard John yell that he didn't shoot Sarah, and how it told him to shoot her. The cops weren't having it. Everyone eventually had to leave their dorms. I walked past the now pool of Sarah's blood as I was leaving. I kept hearing Sarah's voice. No, please. Xander was okay, and the doctor said he will make a full recovery. This event just happened, and I'm assuming Josh is in jail waiting for his trial. The university I attended was quick to fix the holes in my walls, but every time I walk past Sarah's dorm, there's police tape that says, "Police, do not cross." I just can't believe I almost died in this. If I were just a few inches to the right, I would have met the same fate as Sarah. I stand at the edge holding onto this long neck bottle of my remaining alcohol. After having been sober for 4 years, I had to return to this vile form, as my mind lately has been a wreck with all types of images. Just what could compel my friend of nearly 20 years to do such a thing? Why did something so innocent turn ugly? My mind is so badly damaged. I do not even know if I'm writing this all down, or if this is all in my head. Whatever the case, once you'll find me, the truth will be revealed, I suppose. It all began a day after the New Year. My friend had come over in a frantic daze, speaking nonsense of some ramblings. I remember fondly asking questions of what he was going on and on about, but to no avail, he went on with the rambling. Then after taking quite some time, he sat down on my sofa, resting his head between his hands. His eyes darting past me, staring at the wall, yet those eyes even went past those walls, as if they were still searching for the answer to his ramblings. My friend gave me a queer look, along with a shaking smile. He rose up, motioning me to come with him. For about 4 hours we drove, only stopping outside a white 2-story house. It was one of those houses that looked brand new, but you could tell upon close inspection that it was actually much older than it let out. Just like people, houses can get a facelift once and again. My friend turned off the engine, sitting with his hands on his lap, his eyes focused on the house. I asked my friend what we were doing at the house. He only replied with, "He knows." I raised a suspicious eyebrow to my friend. Who is he? My friend pointed to the house. I followed his finger. My eyes locked onto a large glass window that was the front of the house. Inside, I could see a man in his mid-40s walk over to his chair, getting ready to watch some television. "So, who is this?" I inquired. My friend jumped out of the car, slamming the door behind him. I watched him walk to his trunk. He dug around there for 2 minutes. I felt the car shake when he slammed the trunk with a full force. Concerned about what was going on, I stepped out of the car, resting my left shoulder on the hood. "What are you doing?" I saw my friend pause for a moment. He had a large black bag slung around his shoulders. When he looked at me, I could see there was just a void of nothingness in his eyes. "Hey, are you okay?" My friend's eyes darted downward as if they were looking at his door handle. I knew they weren't. He just didn't want me to see the void of nothingness in his eyes anymore. "Come on, it's time to end this." End? End what? My friend started his way to the man's front door. I rushed after my friend. "Hey, Randy. Randy, I know you can hear me." Before I could grasp Randy's shoulder, he had already knocked on the door. I stumbled there with my hand in the air. My friend continued to knock on the door. I could hear the man inside walk his way to the door while spouting, I'm coming, I'm coming." The man opened the door to see my friend and I standing at his step. Before I could even say anything that could give us purpose, my friend reached out towards the man with both hands. He grabbed the man's throat, pushing him against the wall. The man reached out for my friend to push him off. I too reached out to stop my friend. However, my friend showed strength I've never seen in him before, and before I knew it, threw us both to the floor. He threw us inside, shutting and locking the man's door. The man writhed on the ground into his living room. I watched as my friend pulled out a sledgehammer from his bag. He walked over to the man, smacking him in the back of the legs. He hit him once more in the middle of his back, then on his left side. The man cried and moaned in pain. My friend threw the man's phone across the room. I walked over to my friend, who pushed me away. I fell to the ground, but looking up, fearing my friend would bring the hammer down on me. He didn't. He stood over the now beaten, crying man with the hammer in his hand. "Randy, what are you doing?" I asked. "It's fine, Oscar. I'll finally know." My friend bent down to the man. He turned him over so their eyes met. The eyes of nothing meeting the eyes of fear. I bet it surely was something strange. I couldn't begin to understand the thoughts that man had swirling in his mind. "Tell me," asked Randy. "I know you received my letters." "Letters?" I watched as Randy continued to ask the man the same questions. "I know you know, so tell me." "Wait." The man breathing and shifting from calm to horror. "You're the one who sent me those letters?" "Yes, I need to know. I need you to tell me." "I answered you in the first letter," the man shouted. Randy shook his head. "I know you were lying. You need to be honest and tell me the truth." "Randy." I walked over to my friend, placing a calming hand on his shoulder. What do you need to know? He knows. Only he knows the answer. Randy. The man shook his head. It's just a book. A simple book for children. There isn't much to it. The man shouted. What? I turned to Randy, grabbing him by his collar. Randy, are you doing this over a children's book? What has gotten into you? Randy shoved me away. If you won't tell me, then I'll just do that. A deep smile came over him. Like the voice said, I know what to do. I know that's the only way I'll know. Voice? What voice? Randy pulled out a wide range of weapons from his bag. Myself and the man freaked upon seeing those weapons. Randy grabbed his sledgehammer. He turned to me and held up a finger to his lips. Just stay there once I'm done. I'll know everything. I watched as Randy beat the man to a pulp before my eyes. I did nothing but watch. I pressed my back against the wall and slumped down on the floor. The blood, the man's screams, the sounds of the hammer smacking into the man. The worst yet, my friend's eyes were still in that void of nothingness. Blood and bile scattered the floor and walls. The man had been beaten and cracked open in every possible way. I watched as my friend pulled off the man's face, pushing through the muscles and other juices to his skull. My friend reached for a small hammer. He gave swift, careful taps over the man's skull. Randy cracked open the man's skull, pulling it apart as he did. He held the man's brain in his hands. It's here. It's here. I can finally know it. I held my hand over my mouth. The action to vomit was within reach, but I wished not to add to the scene, fearing that whatever the police would come to investigate, I could come up as a suspect. Damn, I am a suspect. Hell, I'm going to be tried with my friend. I used all my might to hold back my vomit. Then my friend did one thing I never thought possible. Upon seeing it, I released a stream of vomit that could make the Mississippi River look like a simple piss stream. Randy held that brain in both hands, and just like one would do with an orange, I watched him bend it on both sides, ripping it apart. With the vomit still fresh on my lips, I watched my friend search through the brain. He searched and searched for whatever he was searching for. Where? He lifted his head, his eyes of nothingness staring at the ceiling. He brought his brain-soaked fingers to his face. Where is it? I have to know. It had to be there. It had to be. Where is it? It looked like he was rambling at nothing, but I felt another presence, an invisible presence. It was what my friend was talking to. That must have been the voice he had mentioned. I managed to get myself up. I reached out to my friend, staring at the remains on that man. Randy, do you know what you have done? My friend stared at me. Now, I know. Hours after that, I called the police, reporting the incident. Luckily, my friend informed the police I wasn't a part of it. He was given life for the gruesome murder. In a month as his imprisonment, I heard he committed suicide. My friend of so many years had gone insane, committed murder, then suicide. It's a bad joke to know how fast things can change. It was as if some force had ordered my friend to do such things. But why? I eventually went to my former friend's home, at the request of his parents, to help get rid of his belongings. Inside, memories of us hanging out played out. Memories that did nothing but bring sadness to never seeing my friend again. As I stumbled around the home, as his parents gathered the more sentimental objects, I came to reach his small little office, which had just been a small closet space he rearranged. I dug through his random stack of papers and files, coming to find a small bright red children's book. Was this the book he had questioned the man about? I flipped through the book. It was just a standard children's book, nothing but colorful pages with a few words. I must have stood there mudding over the book when my friend's mother stepped into the room. She surprised me with such fright that I almost toppled over the desk. I hid the book behind my back. I don't know why I did, but maybe I was embarrassed to have someone see me reading a children's book. With everything taken care of at my friend's place, I took my leave. That night I began to read the children's book, wishing to understand why my friend's mind took such a radical turn. Why did he write those letters to that man? Why did he take me to that man's house? And why did he murder him the way he did? Who was the voice he was speaking to? That is why I'm standing here on the edge of this roof. It's why I have this bottle in my hand, for the drink is the only way I can stay sane. What another bad joke. The reason I stopped drinking was to let my mind get clear of drunken thoughts. But now, I desire those thoughts. They are the only thing that stop what I learned because of that book. Just one more gulp left in the bottle. I could go to the local store down the street for more. But the thoughts from that book come fast after my mind clears itself of drunkenness. I'll do what I can to stop myself from becoming like my friend. For unlike him, who can I go to get answers for that book? That simple children's book. The writer is dead. All I can do is just sit in the dark, questioning myself daily, questioning that book. I don't know what. I don't want to go insane from questioning. I don't. The air feels great against myself. I thought going at this speed the wind would at least cut me, but it's not. It's actually quite relaxing. Well, whatever. I won't have to deal with that voice making me question that book anymore. That damn book. Why? Why was that puppy so happy? So once again, I didn't quite record enough for a full video, so I'm going to do a ramble at the end like we used to. Every time I do these, I feel like I'm talking about nothingness, but you guys seem to like it when I do, so it's a nice little opportunity to kind of update you guys on some stuff and just talk or whatever. I don't really have a whole lot to update you guys on. I guess I want to say that I hope everybody's staying safe during this pandemic. For anybody who is an essential worker, I hope you're staying well, I hope you're taking care of yourself, and I think I speak for the majority of people when I say thank you for doing what you do. Myself, I've just been stuck at home, playing video games, recording scary stories. Not too different from what I normally do, to be honest. This whole entire lockdown thing hasn't really changed a whole lot for me because I kind of just stayed home anyway. It just is what it is. I also wanted to mention, on my last Scary Stories to Relax 2 volume, I think I had the background sound a little bit too loud. I'm going to try and perfect that for the next time around. I noticed that a lot of you guys really didn't like the thunder, which kind of surprised me because I've seen a lot of comments telling me to add thunder, so I tried to make it happen, but I think I had a little bit of a misstep on my part, so something to learn from and something to work better on in the future. Other than that, just thank you guys for continuing to support the channel. Thank you guys for everything that you guys do. I may be the voice for this channel, but it's your guys' stories and your guys' support and the wonderful authors that allow me to share their stories as well that make this channel what it is. And I really enjoy what I do, and I hope to be able to do this for as long as humanly possible. As long as you guys will have me, I'll still be here, being the voice in your headphones, if you will. Just doing what we've always done. We actually came up on 5 years on the channel last April 19th, which is pretty cool. So we've been at this for over 5 years. Of course, all my old videos are gone because of a YouTube glitch. I've mentioned that enough on live streams, and I don't think I need to go into it. Speaking of which, speaking of live streams, because I've noticed that a lot of you guys have been asking me when I'm going to stream again. My streaming schedule has never been a schedule. I try and just stream whenever I feel up to it. I was actually going to stream tonight, which would be the night before this goes up, but it just kind of got a little bit too late, and I just wanted to record the stories and edit the video and go to bed. So it's just kind of one of those things where things have to line up just right for me to be able to stream and make it a good stream. But I really appreciate the support you guys give me when I do live stream. I feel like I get way more support on those streams than I should, and it means a lot to me. And I just can't thank you guys enough for everything that you guys do, whether it just be supporting the content, listening, dropping a like when you enjoy, dropping a comment, letting me know what you guys enjoyed about the video, because that's always very critical to what kind of stories I'll look for in the future and stuff. If something does well, then I'm like, oh, hey, people like this. I'll find more like it. If somebody leaves a comment like, hey, it'd be really cool if you did an Astral Projection story, I always try and go out of my way to find those, even if it's just one person that requested it, because I take a lot of joy in narrating as many different kinds of stories as possible, and you know, spreading my wings to different genres in the horror community and stuff. But yeah, I think that's really about it. If you guys haven't noticed, I've completely broken my upload schedule. I'm no longer doing every 3 days. I've decided that it's better for me to just upload whenever is possible. And I was really surprised because last month, I told myself this at the beginning of April, and it turns out April was one of my most productive months in the history of the channel. I think it actually was my most productive month I've ever had my whole entire time on YouTube. So I feel like that's just a more healthy way of looking at it. Just because I'm not uploading every 3 days doesn't mean I won't be uploading every 2, because that's what we did for the majority of April. It's like taking the stress off and just being like, I don't have to do this, but I want to, if that makes sense. That's not to say that I don't love and adore what I do, because I do, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. But I think I've rambled about enough. I'm sure the video's at an hour by now, just for sake of transparency. I usually only do these ramblings at the end when I don't quite make time, so you guys already know that. I know that's not something I have to keep a secret or anything, so again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys didn't hate the ramble at the end. Again, I always feel awkward doing these because I'm just a horror narrator. There's not ever really anything major to update you guys on or even talk about, but it is fun to talk to you guys, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I hope you guys have a great night, or had a great night. Sometimes people say, you know, why do you always wish us a great night? What if I'm listening during the day or the morning? So for one time only, if you're listening to this during the day, I hope you have a great day. If you're listening to this in the morning, I hope you have a great morning. I'm going to shut up now and close off the video. Again, thank you guys for the immense amount of support, and I will talk to you guys later. Good night, everyone. Or good day, everyone. Or good morning, everyone. Whatever it is, whatever time zone you're in, whenever you're listening to this, I'll catch you guys later.